I didn't notice anything wrong at first. That's the part that bothers me most now, how normal it all felt. How forgettable. If something had been obviously strange right away, I might have paid closer attention. I might have remembered details better, but nothing stood out. Not until later. Not until it was too late to explain any of it. It was New Year's Eve, but not the exciting kind. I wasn't at a party. I wasn't drunk or surrounded by friends or watching the ball drop on a crowded screen. I'd worked a double shift at the hospital, and my brain felt like wet cement by the time I clocked out. The streets were already buzzing when I stepped outside, horns, laughter, fireworks popping too early and too close. I just wanted to get home. I ordered an Uber from the curb, pulled my scarf tighter around my neck, and waited. The app said 3 minutes. It was snowing lightly, the kind that doesn't stick right away, but makes everything shine under streetlights. My phone buzzed when the car arrived, a dark sedan pulling up beside me, hazards blinking. I got in the back seat without really looking at the driver. That part matters, too. I'm sure of it. The car smelled faintly like pine, one of those hanging air fresheners swaying from the rearview mirror. The driver muttered a greeting, something polite, automatic, and pulled away from the curb. I leaned my head back and closed my eyes. The ride should have taken about 20 minutes. I remember thinking I might actually fall asleep before we got there. My phone buzzed again in my hand, but I ignored it. Probably another notification about surge pricing or some pointless end of year reminder. About 5 minutes into the ride, the car slowed. I opened my eyes. We were stopped at a red light. The intersection was mostly empty, just a few cars idling in different directions, their exhaust drifting up in pale clouds. I glanced at my phone, then up again, and that's when I noticed the passenger. They were sitting beside me, same row, back seat, to my right. I don't remember hearing the door open. I don't remember anyone getting in. I don't remember shifting over to make room. One moment I was alone, and the next there was someone sitting there like they'd always been. I didn't react right away. That sounds ridiculous, but it's true. My brain filled in the gaps automatically. Another rider, I thought. Shared trip. Uber pool, or whatever they were calling it now. I must have missed the notification. The passenger was facing forward, hands folded in their lap. They wore a dark coat, collar turned up. I couldn't see their face clearly in the low light, just the edge of a jaw, a hint of hair falling across their forehead. The light turned green. The car moved. I went back to my phone. Looking back, there were little things I should have noticed then. The way the driver didn't acknowledge the other passenger, no greeting, no mirror check. The app didn't say anything about a shared ride. But I was tired, exhausted in that deep, bone-level way that makes you accept anything as long as it doesn't require effort. A few minutes passed in silence. Then the passenger spoke. "Cold night," they said. Their voice was calm, neutral, not male or female enough for me to immediately categorize. Just flat. "Yeah," I replied automatically, without turning to look at them. "Feels colder than it should." They hummed softly, as if agreeing. Another red light, another pause. "I don't usually go out on New Year's," they said. "Me neither," I replied. "Work." There was a brief silence. "What do you do?" they asked. I hesitated. Something about the way they asked felt off, like the question wasn't curiosity so much as confirmation. "Still," I answered, "I'm a nurse." "That must get lonely," they said. I frowned slightly. Sometimes. The car turned onto my street. That's when I realized something was wrong. The app still showed only one rider. No shared trip. No second destination. Just my address glowing on the screen. The little car icon inching closer. My stomach tightened. I glanced sideways. The passenger was still facing forward. Their profile was clearer now in the passing streetlights, pale skin. Eyes that didn't quite reflect the light the way they should have. Their expression was neutral, almost relaxed. "You live around here?" they asked. "Yeah," I said carefully. "So do I?" That didn't make sense. The car slowed to a stop in front of my building. The driver put it in park. The meter ticked off. My phone buzzed. "You've arrived." I reached for the door handle. The passenger didn't move. I paused. "Aren't you?" I gestured vaguely toward the door. "Getting out." They turned their head then, slowly, deliberately. Up close, their face looked wrong, not distorted, not monstrous, just subtly incorrect. Like a photograph that had been edited one too many times. Their eyes were the biggest issue. They weren't empty exactly, just distant. Like they were focused on something behind me. "This is my stop," they said. My heart skipped. "No," I said a little too quickly. "This is my place." They smiled faintly. "That's what you said last time." A chill ran through me. Last time. The driver cleared his throat. "You getting out?" I grabbed my bag, pushed the door open, and stepped into the cold air without another word. The door shut behind me with a solid, final sound. The car pulled away. I stood there for a moment, breathing hard, watching the taillights disappear down the street. I told myself it was nothing, some weird drunk, some awkward shared ride glitch, a coincidence layered with exhaustion and imagination. I went inside. I slept badly that night. The next morning, my phone buzzed at exactly 9:02 a.m. "Please rate your passenger." I stared at the screen. I hadn't been a driver. I hadn't picked anyone up. I hadn't shared a ride. The app refreshed. The notification disappeared. I laughed it off. A glitch, end of year bug. Servers overloaded. By noon, I'd forgotten about it. Until the following year. I didn't think about the notification again until the next time it happened. A year sounds like a long time, but it passes in a blink when your life is mostly routines: work, groceries, laundry, sleep. I moved apartments in the spring. I switched apartments at the hospital in the summer. I dated someone briefly, then didn't. Seasons came and went like pages turning. If you'd asked me in November what I remembered about that New Year's Eve ride, I would have shrugged and said it was a weird night and I was tired. And then December arrived again. The first few days of the month felt normal, but I noticed something I couldn't name. A faint pressure, like a hand resting on the back of my neck. A sense of being slightly behind my own life, like I'd missed a step on the stairs and my body was still waiting for the jolt of impact. I blamed stress. Our unit was short-staffed. People were getting sick. The days were shorter and darker. I found myself snapping at little things: dropped pens, missing chargers, slow elevators, then apologizing too quickly afterward. The night of December 31st, I worked until 1:15 p.m. I remember the time because I checked the clock, and my stomach sank at the thought of trying to get a ride with every drunk person in the city requesting one at once. The lobby doors slid open and cold air rushed in, sharp and clean. There were fireworks somewhere in the distance already, impatient pops echoing between buildings. The sky was a dull slate color, clouded over. I stood under the hospital awning and ordered an Uber. Surge pricing. I stared at the number like it was a personal insult, then accepted anyway because I was too tired to argue with the universe. The app told me the car would arrive in 6 minutes. I watched the little vehicle icon creep toward me on the map. It was the same kind of sedan as last year, dark, anonymous, the sort of car that could belong to anyone. When it pulled up, I didn't think about last year at all. Not consciously. I just opened the back door and slid inside. Warm air hit my face. The faint scent of pine. My stomach tightened before my brain could place why. The driver's silhouette was mostly hidden by the headrest in the darkness, he said, evening, without turning around. I murmured something back and leaned into the seat. The car pulled away. I told myself the pine smell was just a coincidence, a common air freshener, nothing more. But my hands were already sweating inside my gloves. I looked down at my phone. The app showed my destination address, my current apartment, not the one from last year. The time estimate said 19 minutes. Everything normal. Everything fine. We hit the first red light about 4 blocks from the hospital. The car stopped. I glanced up, and there they were, sitting to my right in the back seat, hands folded in their lap, dark coat, collar turned up like they'd been waiting for me all year. I felt my pulse slam hard into my throat. My first instinct was to jerk away, press myself into the left door like a trapped animal. But my body didn't move. My mind did this strange thing where it tried to overlay normal on top of impossible. Shared ride, it whispered. You must have clicked something. I flicked my eyes to my phone, thumb moving fast. I checked for a second rider, a second destination, anything that would make this make sense. Nothing. One rider, one destination. My name at the top, my profile photo. I turned my head slowly, as if fast movement would make it real. The passenger was facing forward, gaze fixed on the windshield. Their face looked the same as last time, pale, subtly wrong around the edges. Like their features were arranged correctly but lacked the small imperfections that make a face human. They spoke without looking at me. Cold night, they said. My chest tightened. It was the same line, same tone, same flat calm. I swallowed. Who are you? They turned their head, not quickly, not dramatically, just a slow pivot like a clock hand. Their eyes met mine. Don't you remember me? They asked. No, I said, and my voice came out thin. They smiled faintly. You always say that. My mouth went dry. The driver didn't react, didn't glance in the mirror, didn't stiffen, didn't shift. Just stared ahead like he couldn't hear us. Did you? I started, then stopped because my thoughts felt tangled. Did you get in the car? They looked at me like the question was odd. I was here, they said. I shook my head no. I was alone. They blinked slowly, as if considering that. You were alone, they repeated, and something about the way they said it made my skin crawl, like they were tasting the words. The light turned green. The car moved again. I tried to breathe normally. I tried to focus on the streetlights passing outside, the familiar storefronts and intersections, anything that anchored me to reality. My thumb hovered over the emergency button in the app. The passenger spoke again. You moved. I jerked my eyes back to them. What? Last time, they said. You lived somewhere else. My stomach dropped. I hadn't said anything about moving. I hadn't given them my new address. I hadn't told anyone in this car anything. Who told you where I lived before? I asked. They tilted their heads slightly. You did, they said. Every time. My mouth opened, but no words came out. The car turned onto a street I didn't recognize. Not wrong at first, just unfamiliar. A little too dark. A little too quiet. The buildings were lower, the streetlights spaced farther apart. Snow had begun sticking to the sidewalks, muting the sound of tires on the road. I leaned forward, peering out. "This isn't the route," I said to the driver. He didn't respond. "Hey," I said louder. "This isn't the route to my address." Still nothing. I stared at the back of his head, trying to see his eyes in the mirror. The mirror was angled slightly upward, reflecting only the car's ceiling and the dangling air freshener. "Pine." The passenger's voice was close, calm. "He can't hear you," they said. I snapped my head toward them. "What are you talking about?" "He's driving," they replied, as if that explained everything. I looked back at my phone. The app still showed the car icon moving toward my destination. Still showed the estimated arrival time, which was decreasing normally. It insisted we were on the correct route. But outside the window, the streets were wrong. My heart pounded so hard it made my vision pulse at the edges. The passenger spoke softly. "It happens like this every year." I clenched my jaw. "What happens?" They didn't answer right away. Their eyes drifted to the window, following something I couldn't see. Then, quietly, they said, "You take me home?" A wave of cold rolled through my stomach. "No," I said. "No, I don't." They looked back at me. Their expression remained calm, but there was something underneath it. Patience, maybe. Like they were waiting for me to accept a fact. "You do," they said. "You always do." I forced myself to look at the driver again. His shoulders rose and fell with steady breaths. His hands were on the wheel. His posture was normal. Nothing looked wrong about him, except the way he seemed sealed off from everything happening behind him. I leaned toward the window, trying to spot street signs. A green sign flashed by too quickly. I caught only one word: Rovar. My stomach tightened harder. The passenger's voice came again, almost conversational. "Do you ever wonder what happens after you get out?" they asked. I stared at them. "After I get out of what?" "After the ride," they said. "After you leave me." "I don't leave you," I hissed. "I don't even know you." They blinked. "You leave," they repeated calmly, "but I don't get out." My breath caught. A memory, sharp, sudden, cut through my mind, standing on the curb last year, watching the taillights disappear, telling myself it was nothing. And now, hearing that line, "I don't get out," I swallowed hard. "What do you mean?" They leaned slightly closer. Their coat sleeve brushed mine. The contact was so cold I flinched. "You don't notice," they said. "You close the door, you go inside, you sleep, and I stay." My stomach churned. "That doesn't make sense," I whispered. "Does it have to?" they asked. The car turned again. Ahead through the windshield, I saw a stretch of road lined with bare trees and a low metal guardrail. Beyond the rail was darkness. The air felt heavier, like we'd driven into a pocket where sound didn't travel properly. My ears popped. I looked at my phone again. The map was wrong now. Not just slightly, completely. The car icon was moving along a thin gray line that didn't match any street layout I recognized. The destination marker, my address, was gone, replaced by a blank circle with no label. My fingers went numb. The passenger watched me watch the screen. "That part always scares you," they said. "Stop the car," I said, voice shaking. "Stop the car right now." The driver kept driving. I reached forward, my hand hovering near the back of his seat, unsure what I planned to do. Shake him, grab the wheel, yell. My body felt sluggish, like I was underwater. The passenger's voice came gentle. "He can't stop," they said. "Not until you do what you came to do." I snapped. "I didn't come to do anything." They held my gaze. "Yes," they said softly. "You did." The road straightened. The trees thinned. And then, through the windshield, I saw it. Water. A river, wide and black, moving slow beneath a thin crust of ice near the edges. Streetlights didn't reach it. The surface reflected nothing. It looked like a hole cut into the world. The car rolled onto a bridge. The guardrails on either side were old and dented. My breath fogged in the air. Even though the car's heat was still running, the passenger turned their head slightly, watching the river as if it fascinated them. "This is where you usually start asking the same questions," they said. I swallowed hard. "What are you?" They didn't answer. I tried again. "Why are you doing this?" They finally looked at me. Their eyes were closer now, clearer. And that was worse, because there was something behind them. Not emotion exactly, not anger or sadness. Something deeper and older, like the weight of a long time passing in darkness. They spoke softly. "Because you took me?" they said. My stomach dropped to my knees. "I didn't," I whispered. They smiled faintly again. "You don't remember?" they said. "But you did?" The car slowed slightly on the bridge. Not stopping, just easing down like approaching a turn. The passenger's hand lifted from their lap. Their fingers were pale and stiff, joints slightly too pronounced. They reached toward my phone. I jerked it back instinctively. "Don't." Their hand hovered between us, then withdrew. "Look," they said, nodding toward the screen. My hand shook as I looked down. The Uber app had changed. The trip screen was gone. In its place was a different interface, simpler, darker. At the top, where the driver's name should have been, there was a blank space. Under it, Passenger Yunke Nobin. Below that, Ratiur Passenger Feistiln. And a question, DLA Pasa NGRX Tichivar AES Kinano. My throat tightened so hard it hurt. I stared at the options. My thumb hovered. "Why is it asking me that?" I whispered. The passenger watched my face like they were studying my reaction. "'Cause this is the part where you decide," they said. "Decide what?" They leaned closer again. The cold rolled off them in waves. "Whether you let me out," they said. I shook my head, panic tightening my chest. "I don't understand." They tilted their heads slightly. "You will," they replied, patient as ever. "You always do." The car continued across the bridge. Halfway over, I realized something else. There were no other cars. Not behind us. No headlights. No taillights. No distant city glow. Just the bridge, the river, and the old streetlights humming faintly above. It was like we were the only moving thing in the world. I forced myself to speak, voice trembling. If you're stuck in the car, why me? Why not leave with the driver?" The passenger's lips parted slightly, like they'd been waiting for that question. "Because it isn't his car," they said. I stared at them. "What?" They looked forward again. "It's yours," they said. My heart lurched. I looked around, suddenly aware of details I'd ignored. How familiar the worn fabric of the seat felt under my fingertips. How the small crack in the dashboard trim looked like the one in my own old car from years ago. How the faint smell beneath the pine wasn't generic air freshener at all. It was the smell of my own fabric seats. My own spilled coffee. My own life. "No," I whispered. The passenger's voice remained calm, almost kind. "You always forget," they said. "That's the gift." The bridge ended. The car rolled off onto a narrow road lined with trees again. There was a sign ahead, reflective white letters. As we passed under the beam of the streetlight, I read it. DD and 1 mile. My mouth went dry. I looked down at my phone again. The app's question sat there waiting. DI or passagier HEV heel. Yes, can I know. My thumb shook. The passenger watched unmoving, and the car kept driving toward the dead end like it had nowhere else to go. If you reply 3, I'll send part 3 where the narrator tries to break the loop, contacts Uber support, and discovers the ride history doesn't just repeat, it changes. The dead end sign didn't feel like a warning. It felt like an appointment. The road narrowed as we moved away from the bridge. The trees leaned in close, bare branches lacing overhead like black veins against the cloudy sky. Snow drifted lazily through the headlights, and the beam caught it in slow, glittering spirals. There were no houses, no sidewalks, no other signs of life. Just the hum of the engine and the steady motion forward, as if the car was being pulled along a track. I stared at my phone until the screen blurred. DDR passagier ikish TV ishili. Yes, no. My thumb hovered over Neno because it was the only honest answer. They hadn't exited. They were sitting right beside me. But something about pressing it felt dangerous. Like checking a box on a form you didn't understand, signing your name to something you hadn't read. I glanced at the passenger. They were watching my hand. Their expression was calm, almost bored, like they'd seen this exact hesitation 100 times. "You don't have to be afraid," they said. My voice came out tight. "I am not doing anything on this app." Their eyes drifted to the windshield and back. "You already are." That was the worst part. I could feel it. A subtle pressure, as if the car itself was waiting for my answer. As if the road ahead didn't exist until I made a choice. I forced my gaze away from the screen. I looked at the driver again. "Hey," I said, louder, sharper. "Pull over." No response. I leaned forward and reached for the back of his seat, my fingers sinking into the fabric. "Stop the car!" Still nothing. It was like shouting at a TV. The passenger's voice came softly. "He's not for you." I snapped back. What does that mean? They didn't answer. They didn't have to. The road ahead bent slightly and the headlights swept across a set of mailboxes. A row of them, rusted, crooked, half buried in snow. One of them had a name painted on the side in peeling white letters. It was my last name. My stomach dropped so hard I thought I might throw up. "No," I whispered. The car moved past the mailboxes and onto a short, narrow lane where the trees opened into a small clearing. A house sat there. It was dark, except for a single porch light glowing faintly, like a candle in a fog. I didn't recognize the house, but I recognized the feeling it gave me, an instant, deep dread that came from somewhere beneath memory. The sense of a door you've tried not to think about. The car slowed, tires crunching on gravel. We pulled into the driveway. The engine idled, and the passenger turned their head toward me. "This is where you usually get out," they said. I stared at the house. "I've never been here?" They smiled faintly. "You have." I couldn't breathe. The air felt too cold in my lungs. The porch light flickered once, then steadied. The driver's hand stayed on the wheel. His posture didn't change. I realized then I couldn't even hear the radio, or the heater fan. The whole cabin had gone oddly quiet, like the sound had been turned down. The passenger spoke again. "You can make it simple." I clenched my phone in my fist. "What are you asking me to do?" They looked toward the house. "Let me out." My mouth went dry. "Why?" They turned back to me slowly. "Because I don't belong in the car." "But you said you stay," I whispered. "You said you don't get out." Their eyes held mine. "Not unless you tell the truth." I swallowed. "What truth?" They leaned slightly closer. The cold from them rolled across my skin. Not like winter air, like standing beside an open freezer, like a deep place underground. "You took me home," they said. "And you didn't check." My hands trembled. Check what? They blinked once. Whether I was still there, the question on the screen seemed to pulse. Diedier passagier ekti venii. The passenger nodded toward my phone. It's not a question for the app. It's a question for you. I felt my throat tighten. If I press no, what happens? They smiled again, a little wider this time. Not friendly, not cruel, just certain. Then you remember, they said. My stomach turned. And if I press was? They looked toward the house, then back at me. Then you lie, they said. And you keep me? My chest tightened so hard it hurt. That doesn't make sense. If I press yes, it means you exited. They tilted their head patient. It means you said I did. Outside, the porch light flickered again. The house seemed to wait. I stared at the yes and no buttons like they were two doors. My thumb shook above the screen. I couldn't do it. Not here. Not like this. I swiped up and closed the app. The screen went black. For a moment, there was only my reflection in the glass and the faint outline of the passenger beside me. Then my phone lit again. The Uber app reopened by itself. Same screen. Same question. Same two choices. I sucked in a sharp breath. Stop doing that. The passenger didn't move. I'm not. I tried to power off the phone. The screen dimmed, the shutdown slider appeared, and I dragged it. The phone went dark. I exhaled, shaking. A beat passed. Then the phone turned itself back on. No Apple logo. No loading. Just on. Uber app. Same question. My hands were numb. The passenger watched me calmly, like this was all expected. I forced myself to speak, voice low and trembling. Okay, I said. Okay. I'll call someone. They didn't respond. I opened the phone app and dialed my best friend, Mara. The line rang. Twice. Then it clicked. But instead of Mara's voice, I heard something else. Static. Soft, crackling static like an old radio between stations. Mara, I said, panic rising. Mara, can you hear me? Static. Then faintly underneath it, so faint I thought I imagined it, I heard a voice. Not Mara's. Mine, whispering, don't press no. My blood turned to ice. I yanked the phone away from my ear, stared at it like it had bitten me. The call timer was still running. The static continued, and under it my own whisper repeated, broken by interferency. Don't press no. I hung up, shaking so hard my teeth clicked. The passenger's voice came softly. You called last time too. My stomach dropped. What? They nodded slightly, like they were confirming a routine. You panic. You call someone. You hear yourself, then you stop trying. I stared at them. Why would I hear myself? They blinked slowly. Because you already did. My chest tightened. I don't understand. You will, they said, and their calmness was worse than any scream. You always do. I looked out at the house again. The porch light glowed steady now. The driveway was empty. Snow covered everything in a smooth, untouched layer. No footprints. No tire tracks besides ours. It looked like the house hadn't been visited in years. I swallowed and forced my voice into something steadier. Fine, I said. If this is a loop, then I can break it. The passenger watched me. I leaned forward again, this time determined. I grabbed the back of the driver's seat and shook it hard. Stop the car, I shouted. Pull over! Wake up! The driver didn't even flinch. It was like shaking a mannequin. My mind raced. If the driver wasn't real, if the route wasn't real, then the one thing that might be real was me. Me and the passenger. And the question. I clenched my phone tighter, knuckles white. Okay, I said, voice shaking. If you want out so bad, why don't you just open the door and leave? The passenger's eyes drifted to the door beside them, then back to me. I can't, they said. Why not? They took a slow breath, as if the answer was unpleasant even to say. Because I'm not the one who locked it, they said. A cold, crawling sensation ran over my scalp. I looked at the door handle near them. It was right there, normal, unlocked as far as I could tell. But the way they said it made me suddenly aware of something subtle, the way the cabin felt sealed. Like the air inside had been shut in for a long time. I reached toward my own door handle and pulled. The handle moved, but the door didn't open. I pulled harder. Nothing. A trapped, metallic resistance. My breath caught. I tried the lock button. It clicked. I pulled again, still nothing. My stomach dropped. The passenger's voice came quietly. You always do that too. I stared at them, throat. So what? What, the doors don't open until I answer the question. They nodded, slow and calm. Yes, they said. The porch light outside flickered once more. The house waited, and the Uber app waited. My thumb hovered again over yes and no. I could feel tears sting in my eyes, not from sadness, but from sheer pressure. Fear, confusion, the awful sense of being forced into a choice without knowing what either choice meant. I whispered, what happens if I say yes? The passenger leaned slightly closer. Their face was inches from mine now, and for the first time I smelled something beneath the pine. Not air freshener water. Cold, stagnant river water. You keep me, they said softly, and you go home like nothing happened. And if I say no? Their eyes held mine like dark glass. Then you remember what you did, they said. My heart hammered. What did I do? I whispered. The passenger's mouth curved slightly, not a smile. A knowing. You drove, they said, and you didn't stop. The words hit me like a punch. The river, the bridge, the dead end. A sudden flash in my mind, not a full memory, more like a bright shard. Headlights sweeping across something on the road, a shape in the dark, a hand-lifted palm out, the hard jerk of the wheel. I sucked in a sharp breath. I shook my head. No, I would remember that. The passenger's voice was steady. That's the point, they said. My stomach turned. You always think you'd remember, they continued. You always think you'd never leave someone in the car. You always think you'd never drive away. My hands shook so badly I almost dropped my phone. I forced myself to focus on something concrete. The ride history. If this had happened before, if I'd been here before, there had to be a record. Uber saved everything. Every ride, every destination. I backed out of the trip screen and opened my ride history. The list loaded. My heart pounded as I scrolled back. Trips, receipts. Normal routes. I found last year's New Year's Eve ride. The date was there. December 31st. Time 11:47 p.m. Pick up the same hospital. Drop off my old apartment. It looked normal. Too normal. I tapped it. The details opened. Driver name a normal name. Car a normal model. Map a normal route. Fare a normal amount. There was even a rate your driver option, like nothing strange had ever happened. I stared, confused. Then I noticed something at the bottom of the trip receipt. A small section I'd never seen before. Passenger ad. On UMKM and UDD, my throat tightened. I didn't remember rating anyone. I never would have. I tapped it. The screen changed to a feedback page. There was a comment box, and inside the comment box there was text, already filled in. In my account. From last year, forwards, DDN to get oat, SARY. My vision blurred. I stared at that sentence like it was a threat, like it was a confession. My hands went cold. The passenger beside me spoke softly, almost gently. You wrote that, they said. I swallowed hard, voice barely a whisper. No. They nodded slowly. You did. And then you forgot. The porch light outside flickered again. The house waited. My phone waited. And my own words stared back at me from last year's receipt. DDNTTO SARY. Something inside my chest cracked open with a sickening certainty. Not memory, but the sense that memory had been removed. Like a tooth pulled so cleanly you didn't notice until you tasted blood. The passenger watched my face. You're close, they said softly. I couldn't breathe. Close to what? To the truth, they replied. I shook my head, tears finally spilling over. I don't know what you want from me. Their eyes didn't soften. They didn't harden either. They just stayed steady. I want you to answer, they said. The Uber app brought the trip screen back automatically like it knew I'd wandered too far. DERU passenger EKSTH Fioli. Lais Cano. My thumb hovered again, and the car remained parked, idling in front of the dark house that felt like it had been waiting for me all my life. The car idled in the driveway like it could wait forever. The engine's low hum felt less like a sound and more like pressure, something steady and inescapable, vibrating through the seat and into my bones. The porch light cast a weak yellow circle onto the snow, illuminating the front steps of the house. I noticed then that the snow inside that circle was disturbed. Footprints, one set, leading from the driveway to the front door, none leading back. My throat tightened. I stared at the Uber app again. Diadior Passagier ESNO. The passenger watched me without blinking. For the first time I realized how still they were. Not tense, not rigid, just unmoving. Like someone who didn't need to shift their weight, didn't feel discomfort, didn't get tired. How many times? I whispered. Their head tilted slightly. How many what? How many years has this happened? I asked. They considered that for you? Or for me? My hands trembled. For me? They looked toward the house again. Long enough. The implication settled in my chest like a stone. This isn't the first time, I said. They shook their head gently. No. And not just last year. No. I swallowed hard. How far back? Their eyes met mine. As far as you're willing to forget. The words hurt in a way I didn't fully understand yet. I forced myself to keep asking. What happens if I press no? They answered immediately this time. You open the door, they said. You let me out, and you remember. My breath shook. All of it? They nodded. And if I press yes, they leaned back slightly, giving me space I didn't want. Then you close the door, they said. You go home. You sleep. You wake up believing the night was uneventful. And you? I asked. Their eyes darkened just a fraction. I stay, they said. Until next year. My chest tightened painfully. Why only New Year's Eve? They looked almost thoughtful. Because it's a boundary, they said. A moment when people expect endings and beginnings. When memory is already soft. When you tell yourself that what happened before doesn't have to follow you. That made a terrible kind of sense. I thought of all the New Year's Eves I couldn't remember clearly. All the years that blurred together. All the nights I'd written off as uneventful, forgettable, normal. I looked again at the footprints, at the single set leading to the door. Is that? I started. Yes, they said softly. That's you. My stomach lurched. I shook my head. No, I would remember coming here. They didn't argue. They just waited. Because they didn't have to convince me. The memory was already pushing its way up. Not as images at first. As sensations, the smell of river water. Cold air burning my lungs. The weight of the steering wheel vibrating under my hands. A voice beside me. Not calm, not patient then, confused, slurred, frightened. Hey, hey, stop. Headlights sweeping across a narrow road. A sharp turn, a sickening lurch, the car stopping too late. My breath hitched. I didn't mean to, I whispered. The passenger didn't respond. I pressed my free hand against my chest, trying to steady myself. I was tired, I said, tears slipping down my face. It was late. It was dark. I didn't see you until you did, they said quietly. The memory sharpened. The car stopped on the shoulder, hazard lights blinking. Me sitting there, hands locked on the wheel, heart hammering so hard I thought it would tear me open. Looking at the passenger beside me, not bleeding, not screaming, just staring. Asking me why the car had stopped. Asking me where we were. Asking me to take them home. And me, God, me, looking at the empty road, the dark trees, the river beyond the guardrail, and thinking about how late it was. About how close midnight was. About how no one else was around. Thinking about how easy it would be to just keep driving. You didn't push me, the passenger said gently. You didn't hurt me after. I sobbed quietly now, shoulders shaking. You just didn't let me out, they continued. You closed the door. You drove away. The house in front of me felt closer now. Javier, what happened to the driver? I whispered. They looked toward the front seat. He left, they said. Like you. I stared at the back of the driver's head. The realization settled slowly, horribly. There had never been a driver. Not anymore. The car idled, waiting. I didn't know, I said desperately. I swear, I didn't know what would happen. I know, they replied. And for the first time, there was something like sadness in their voice. That's why you get the question. I wiped my face with shaking hands. Why not just make me remember, I asked. Why make me choose every year? They looked at me steadily. Because it only works if you're honest, they said. Memory given back without consent breaks people. You have to open the door yourself. The Uber app seemed brighter now. The yes and no buttons stark against the dark background. The porch light flickered once more. The house waited. My chest felt tight, but there was something else there now too, clarity. If I pressed yes, I would walk away again. I would sleep. I would forget. I would live another year believing I was a good person who'd never left anyone behind. And they would stay, in the car, in the dark, alone, until the next New Year's Eve. If I pressed now, I would remember everything, every year, every version of myself that had chosen convenience over responsibility. The weight of it pressed down on me, crushing and awful. But it was real. I took a shaking breath. I'm sorry, I said. The passenger watched me carefully. For what? They asked. For not checking, I whispered. For leaving. For lying. Their shoulders relaxed slightly, like they'd been holding tension I couldn't see. That's the right apology, they said. My thumb hovered over an NO. I pressed it. The moment my skin touched the glass, the car changed. The engine cut out. The hum vanished. Silence flooded the cabin so suddenly my ears rang. The doors unlocked with a loud final click. Cold air rushed in from somewhere, seeping through the seams, filling the space. The passenger exhaled, a long, slow breath, like someone surfacing. The front door of the house creaked open. Warm yellow light spilled out, stronger than the porch light, reaching all the way to the driveway. I could see inside now. A narrow hallway, a coat rack, a familiar painting on the wall, one my mother used to have when I was a child. My stomach clenched. The passenger stood. When they moved, it was awkward at first, like they weren't used to gravity anymore. They steadied themselves on the seat, then turned to face me. Up close, their face looked more human than it had all night. Less distant, less wrong. Will you come in? They asked. I nodded, throat tight. Yes! They stepped out of the car. Their feet crunched in the snow, leaving clear footprints. Real ones. They paused, then turned back to me. You won't forget this time, they said. I shook my head. I know. They studied my face for a long moment, as if committing it to memory. Good, they said. Neither will I. They walked toward the house. I followed, legs weak, heart heavy. Behind us, the car sat dark and empty. As I stepped onto the porch, my phone buzzed one last time. I looked down. The Uber app displayed a final message. Tiricom PE, Passagier XTTH VCLE. Below it, a single star rating appeared. Not 5, just 1. And underneath it, a line of text. Tarnyo Ufare Johannes tu. I swallowed hard and put the phone in my pocket. Inside the house, the door remained open. Waiting, I stepped forward. And behind me, the porch light went out.